Welcome to another video breakdown of a great speaker, where we take a speaker in a certain industry, we break down, we talk about what they're doing well, what they can improve on, so we can all learn from their practice. In this video, we're breaking down Michael Saylor's video, and he is a CEO of a publicly traded company. He's an advocate of Bitcoin, and he talks about Bitcoin and popularizes the concept of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So it's a very hard, dense topic. We're going to see how a topic like that is approached, and especially from the perspective of Michael Saylor. So let's jump to the video.
Exactly. Thanks, Peter. And also, as we see here, he has good messaging, but his delivery needs a lot of work in certain areas. So we'll talk about that too. All right, so this is one of the other individuals, and they're all on a call together. He's talking, so we'll see how Michael interrupts. This is going to be a first example.
Do that when you have no other currency. But in the US, we'll simply borrow against the Bitcoin and continue to use the Visa rails that we have that work just fine.
Well,
and that's where, yeah,
can I break in when you get a...
And this is Michael here, and this is what he's saying as he's breaking in.
Awesome. Can I just add something? Like,
yes.
This is a great example of somebody cutting in a virtual setting. Like, notice, like, he wanted to add something to the conversation. He just said, "Can I break in when you have a moment?" And the other guy paused, and then Michael continues and adds his point.
Exactly.
And notice, nothing aggressive about it, nothing weird about it. Totally normal.
And if you look at the cadence of when he breaks in, it's a moment of slowness. So we'll watch
0.15 Satoshis. That's going to make a lot of sense to people. And if you can pay for it in a fraction of a Satoshi, which is effectively zero, why wouldn't you do that when you have no other currency? But in the US, we'll simply borrow against the Bitcoin and continue to use the Visa rails that we have that work just fine.
Well,
and that's
can
where, yeah,
can I break in when you get a moment? I have two things I wanted to add. I think are important. One.
Go ahead and pause it there. Yeah, I was gonna say, as the cadence slows down for a second, and then he says, "Can I break in for a moment?"
Yeah, and notice the other guy finished his thoughts completely, and Michael jumped in when the thought is complete before the other guy started a new topic. That's called social awareness. Like, it would have been rude if Michael cut him off in the middle of his thoughts.
Exactly. And that's a key part to distinguish there, because I think with a lot of people, when they go in to interject, they will interject someone mid-sentence, and then that person, it is seen as rude. So that's a great way to do the end of the thought when that natural period takes place.
Awesome. And once he cut in, notice that he used a technique called a presetting, where he said, there are two things I want to talk about. Already, there are two files open in your head, ready to take the information in. I don't know if he's going to follow through with the two things, but it doesn't matter. Like, already, I'm like, okay, I'm primed to listen for two things.
Exactly. So he's already set the frame, and he's already got the floor for at least his two ideas.
Love it.
I think it's pretty important for people to understand that one of the reasons that Bitcoin is an economic imperative, even in the developed world, is that most of the assets that people hold in the US and Europe are currency derivatives.
Pause. That's his statement. And notice that he said one important thing that investors need to know. Like, he's giving value to what he's saying before he says it. Most of the assets in the US and Europe are currency derivatives, which means they depend on the currency they're issued in. Like, if it's in the dollar, it's in the dollar. If it's in another currency, the lira or the pound, it's the pound. Yeah, great.
Exactly. And also to note about his delivery as well here, great messaging, great framing, great way of interjecting the conversation. But you'll see in his delivery, if you've seen some of the other videos that we've done in the Virtual Mastery Training, our digital course, you've seen Mel Robbins, very good delivery, and we comment on that. But with him here, he really is looking away from the camera. He's shifting a lot in his position. He's almost leaning back a little bit and just looking down. So his delivery is not the best with how he's approaching it, but his messaging is that strong with it.
100%, 100%. If Michael learns from Mel Robbins on how to deliver, he'll be like an out of this world speaker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if you own a value stock, it's value based on the value of the discounted cash flows. And if you own real estate, it's value based upon the rents. And if you own a bond, it's value based upon the coupon. And so if the currency is losing 15% of its value a year, then you have to apply a 15% discount rate to all those currency derivatives. And you look out 10 years and you realize that even though right now they might have got a bump.
Go ahead and pause there. What are your thoughts on that, Peter?
The messaging is great. Obviously, he is speaking to investors. So he's laying out the valuation models, like if it's a stock, discounted cash flow, if it's real estate, then it's rent, then if you're valuing bonds, then it's a coupon rate. And then he's making his point logically. If these are valued by the dollar and the dollar is depreciating in value, like 10%, 15% a year, over 10 years, you have to add that depreciation into your valuation model. So he's logically walking an investor through his way of thinking. And that's a very complicated thing to do. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It can get convoluted really, really fast. I think given that he's talking to investors, he's doing a great job with the messaging.
And a keynote too about explaining his thought process there is, it is good to explain your thought process, but a trap that catches a lot of people is they go on tangents in their thought process because the mind isn't just linear. It goes down different directions and pieces different ideas together. But when you're communicating your thought process and walking people through the logic behind your decision making, your why, it's very important to go one step at a time and stay really focused with that, so you're not going in all these different directions, which you're going to lose.
Yeah, such a great point, Chaz. Such a great point. Exactly. Like this is a very ocean-like topic.
Oh yeah.
And he's laser focused. Like he doesn't want, it's like a dog catching a bone. I'm like, I'm grabbing this bone, I'm stuck on it, I'm gonna chew it till it's all gone.
Exactly. So we'll go on a few more seconds.
Awesome.
In this V-shaped recovery or K-shaped recovery, ultimately, if we have a loose money policy in the Western world, then they're all collapsing. And that's why you want a non-sovereign bearer instrument store of value that's not based on cash flows. And I would just suggest everybody apply this mental model in their head. If you were running a business in Argentina, and if I told you that the Argentine currency was going to collapse from 3 pesos to the dollar to 150 pesos to the dollar over the next 15 years, and then
we'll pause there a second. So what are your thoughts on that statement, Peter?
Still, the messaging is phenomenal. Notice he began with a statement about valuing assets based on the derivative currency. Then he used evidence, which is logic. He walked through it and he demonstrated that if you use the currency and the currency is devaluating because of inflation, then you have to account for that. Now he's using a scenario to illustrate the same exact point. And he's using, imagine you are in Argentina, and is that what he used?
I think the Argentine, yeah.
So he used a different country. Imagine you're in there, you're investing, and now he's going to walk you through the same exact scenario that mirrors his logic, which is, from a messaging point of view, it's phenomenal. Again, I'd hate to harp on Michael, but he needs to do a better job with the delivery of his message.
Yeah, maybe even a little more pausing, a little more pacing work. This is something that a lot of smart individuals at a higher level have come to us, and they're coming to us at the managerial level, and they know their stuff very well, but now they have to speak to different audiences, and they're noticing there's not the level of engagement that there were with their engineering team, or there's not the interest, there's not the questions after their talks, and they don't know why. And a lot of the time it's their level of tonality is just very much the same, where engineers, it's okay to speak around that because they understand the messaging. But when you are communicating to a larger audience, you need to have that ability to tap into a little bit of a slower pace and a little bit of a more dynamic pace and bringing in pausing. Whereas he just has that very level tone, it's almost easy to zone out. So we'll keep going a little bit.
To try to figure out what your investment strategy should be. Should you own Argentine bonds, Argentine stocks, Argentine commercial real estate, or Argentine cash? Or should you own something else? The answer is there isn't any strategy in a collapsing currency. There is no mix of conventional assets that saves you, because they're all eventually going to get ripped down by the collapse of the underlying currency. So
We'll go ahead and pause there. So what are your thoughts on that clip, Peter?
Yeah, still the messaging is good. I would definitely, like, the only thing I would add is like, it's easy to add gestures to this, because if the currency is here and that's the foundation of valuation, like, you can easily do it with your hands and express it and say collapse of this currency. It would look much better than how he's saying it.
Exactly, especially such in-depth financial technical information like that. You need some ways of anchoring with your hands, or ways of splitting out the motions, or bringing in something else to help your audience. So
Yeah. And this is like the takeaway here. He is very popular, just like Mel Robbins, the other video we did, which you should watch. And you can get away with things if your message is solid. His message is well thought of and people resonate with it. That's why he's popular. Now, that doesn't mean you should slack and relax. I think, okay, now you have a strong message. Now you need to improve your delivery, because when you have both delivery and messaging, you're unstoppable.
Exactly. And another good example of strong messaging, not the best delivery, is going to be Elon Musk, where
Yes.
he goes in and a great strategic, where he says mission is to go to have humans on Mars by 2050. And here's how our SpaceX rockets work. And he goes into that. Oh, it's great, great, great. But then on his delivery side, he's stumbling. He's he just repeats, but it doesn't matter, because he's Elon Musk. His position, his stand, and his messaging are so on point.
So a question for you, Chaz, a surprise question. If you have to choose between messaging and delivery, which one would you do?
Yeah, no doubt. It has to be messaging. It has to be messaging, because you can come in with the worst delivery, but if your messaging is okay, people will forgive your delivery. If you come in with excellent delivery, timing, you're really good, you might be interesting for the first little bit, but you're going to lose people by jumping all over the place and not staying concise, and it has to be messaging.
100%. Like, for me, it depends on the time frame. Short-term messaging, short-term delivery is important. Long-term messaging is important. So if you want to capture both tails, like, you want to capture people in the short term and hold them for the long term, then you need to follow both.
And if you're not quite good at doing both long term, at least start with just high energy. Start with some excitement, and then you can start tapping into maybe some of your not so great delivery.
Exactly. Add a couple of gestures. No big deal. No big deal.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking around, watching this video. If you like this, be sure to subscribe, like the video. We'll have other speaker breakdowns coming, and stick around for more content.